friends! Welcome to my adventures in making a YouTube channel. I'm giving this a shot because we've been in extended quarantine for a really long time now and I need to get something to keep my creativity game going. This is part one of the two-part studio build series. So this one I'm just going to be focusing on how I built this here wall. And the next one I'm going to look at everything else. This wall here was an adventure in learning a lot of things I didn't know and trying things that probably hadn't been done before. So here in Australia, in a rental, we can't really put holes in the walls or repaint or anything like that. So I needed to find a workaround for this to create what I wanted to create without leaving a mark on the room itself. Coming up with how to do this was a little tricky. I needed to work out how to get a support system that was freestanding and then build the wall itself. So the reason I've chosen to do a wall was to cover up the wood paneling behind it. The wood paneling had a very 70s vibe and it wasn't really something that I gelled with myself. This way, I get a big canvas to work on art projects on whenever I feel like. So with this problem in mind, I had a little scour on the wonderful world of Amazon and I found these pressure poles. They're usually used to hold up curtain rails or fabric or something lightweight. But I thought maybe, just maybe they would work if I flip them vertically and use the pressure to hold up some sheets of thin ply to create this beast of a wall. So in doing so, I didn't quite know how much weight they would be able to take, how much flex they'd have in them, or anything like that. I ordered myself some sheets of ply, a 9mm thick ply and 12mm thick ply. I got 3 sheets of the 9mm and 1 sheet of the 12mm. To add to this, I ended up buying 3 2x4s at 2.4 meters long. The wall will be made up of 2 full sheets of 9mm ply with 1 infill piece at the bottom, just to make it reach a little bit closer to the roof. I didn't want it to touch the roof fully, as I didn't want to leave a mark up there. I started out by measuring my infill piece, cutting it down on the track saw, and then cutting out squares in the corners with my jigsaw so that I could have access to the feet later on. I also did the same with the jigsaw on one of the full sheets of ply. I used a chisel to then tap out the center cut on each piece. Because I'm using thin ply, it has a lot of flex, so I decided to add a frame around the outside using 12mm strips. I started off measuring out strips at 60mm wide. I also did one for the bottom at 100mm wide. Using the track saw, I lined it up, started cutting out 9mm width grooves ready for the ply sheets to slip into later on. I then grabbed a chisel and chiseled out any excess pieces of ply left down the groove.
March winds and April showers make way for the sweet flowers, and then comes
I cut 3 strips in this manner at 60mm wide, another small one at 60mm wide just to cover that infill piece, and one at 100mm wide for the bottom. I wanted the bottom one to be slightly wider just to give it a little bit more footing. In the end, I had 2 full lengths, one for each side, 2 pieces ready to cover the infill gap, 2 pieces for the top to fit around the jigsaw holes for the feet, and 2 pieces at the bottom the same, but wider. I'll show you how I use them later on. I next cut 5 strips of the 12mm ply at 50mm wide. I'm going to use this as the bracing for behind the ply sheets.
Miles going to lead off jam session on his famous theme number, Flying Home.
While I was still outside and had the space, I decided to quickly start the paint job. I'll finish it off later inside, but for now I started off by just undercoating all of my pieces and then adding 2 coats of top coat white. I'm just grabbing any old paint from my shed just to keep this cheap. For the pieces we cut prior, which from now on I'm going to call the framing pieces, I painted them matte black. I was pretty excited to get some colour onto this, so I thought I might start by doing the first coat outside while I still had some space. Paint-wise, I had a bunch of greys and blacks in the shed from previous projects, and I didn't really want to spend money on paint. So I decided to do a sort of dry brush grayscale theme. I just wanted to give the room some depth without really adding too much in the way of colour or pattern. I grabbed a few brushes from my kit because I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to use yet, but later on you can see that I only used one or two of these. When mixing paints, I usually start by mixing a small amount of the colour I want. While I'm doing this, I try and remember what ratios of paint I put in. This means that I can then add larger amounts, but in the same ratio, create the same colour on a larger scale. It also means that you should be able to repeat your colour later as long as you've written down the ratio. I started off by dry brushing up the edges. I then roughed out a really basic triangle in the corner and filled it right in because I knew that I wanted to have the darker colours on top of it. Once I had a basic shape formed, I pulled the brush from the colour block area up through until it really sort of petered out at the top, giving it some nice brush stroke effects. I blocked out that triangle shape quite low from where I wanted the end point to be because I wanted to have some texture running through behind the other colours. A dry brush effect is when you lightly dip your paintbrush into the paint, just kind of tapping it on the surface and then dragging it along your canvas or board. Once I'd done that coat of paint, I decided to move inside and stop procrastinating building this thing. Those 5 strips of 12mm ply we cut earlier are ready to become the structural supports. To do this, I measured the width of the extension rods. I found that they were 20mm and grabbed some saddle clips to match, usually used by electricians. I needed 15 of them. I also grabbed 30 button head screws to help fix them in place. After fixing all 15 of these down, it was time to try and stand this thing up. So to use the pressure poles, just grab them, pull them, twist one end into place, and then once you've got it in the area that you want it, you use this section right here to give it the final extension that it needs to create the pressure. At this point, I was getting pretty sick and tired of not having a surface to work on, so I decided to build my desk legs. Next, I grabbed the framing pieces that I painted black earlier and pre-drilled holes right down the centre of the channel. This is so I can screw it in place easily later on. And next, grab my infill piece and fix the two bottom pieces of framing to it. To do this, I use short, regular screws. This can be a little tricky lining it up, so go slow. I did the same thing with the top section, and to this piece I also added my two infill pieces. So at this point I realised I might need some more support through the back. I grabbed some 2x4 pieces, popped them in place, and screwed my support structure to it. This allowed me to have something really sturdy to push into as I screwed on. Started to fix my ply in place, beginning with the infill piece at the bottom. I put 5 screws in each row where I'd previously put my structural supports. I tried staying an independent woman and putting the top piece up by myself, but realised that was a little sketchy. So I called in my incredible boyfriend to stand and hold it in place while I worked around it. This is where I realised I kind of made a slightly annoying mistake. It was okay, I was able to fix it, but it was annoying. So if you just listen to me now, you don't have to do this. The problem I had is I hadn't considered my framing pieces in my structural rows. So the pieces behind the sheets were the same length as the sheets when actually they needed to be a little bit shorter to accommodate for the framing. To fix this, I grabbed a hammer and chisel, marked out the points where the framing would line up, and tapped them out. Once I chiseled all 10 sections out, I was ready to start attaching the side pieces of my framing. Remember, the top and bottom were already fixed in place.
Je me souviens quand j'étais petit à la maison, le plus difficile c'était la fin du mois. Surtout les 30 derniers jours. Parce qu'à cette époque-là,
On the side by the door, I had enough space to be able to fix it in the same way I had with the top and bottom pieces. But on the side by the wall, I didn't have enough room to get my driver in there. So we created a sliding chock system using 2 triangles to create pressure to hold the piece in place. I used some pretty intense wood glue.
maintenant ils sont mieux payés les ouvriers. Et c'est fini, il n'y a plus de boulot. Et circuler, y a rien à voir. Rien.
Put the piece in place, and then I used the chock system to hold pressure as the glue dried. This is the point where it was starting to get really exciting. Things were coming together. Next I went outside to mix my mid-grey tone. I wanted something that was kind of halfway between the original grey and black. Using a spare extension pole, I marked out the area that I wanted the grey to fill and began to fill it in. I used the same technique as last time, but I finished it slightly lower so that you could still see the original grey. Once again, I repeated the same technique with the black coat, measuring out prior to marking on the board. I had a lot of fun mashing paint around. I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming on this weird journey with me. We've got another couple of videos lined up, ready to film, and I'm just enjoying using this as a way to stay motivated in a weird time. Please, if you like what I'm trying here, subscribe and comment below. Thanks so much for your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye!